Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our webinar introducing the 2025-2026 Willamette Valley Visitors Association Strategic Investment Fund. That's a mouthful, I know. For those of you who I haven't gotten to meet yet, my name is Karen Olson, and I'm the new Destination Development Manager for WAVA as of July. So I'm excited to be working in this region and to meet those of you I haven't gotten to meet yet. Thank you so much for introducing yourselves in the meeting chat. And I hope I get to see a lot of you face to face soon. So we wanted to host this webinar today just to have a chance to talk through the guidelines for this fund and have a live opportunity to answer any questions that arise for you as you think about whether this is a good fit for your organization and how it might meet some funding needs that you have. And we will take notes on the questions that are asked today, and then we'll be preparing kind of a supplemental FAQ document if that seems appropriate, just to answer the questions that come up and make it as easy as possible for folks to access the application to this fund. We're hoping that this process is relatively simple and relatively straightforward so that if you're not somebody who has accessed a lot of grant funding in the past, this is a good first step into that world of requesting funding. We're hoping to make it as easy to access as possible. So with that, hopefully you can see my screen. I'm going to share a few slides that just talk through how the fund is set up and then hopefully leave lots of time for questions. But our strategic investment fund is a core thing that we do to support our region and our tourism partners. We are the regional destination management organization for the Willamette Valley. And if you are aware of how tourism industry is structured in Oregon, there's Travel Oregon, that is the statewide destination management organization. And then the state's divided into 7 regions, and the Willamette Valley region is the one that we represent. And the valley, for our purposes, is defined as the peak of the Coast Range to the peak of the Cascades, and from the about Wilsonville south to Cottage Grove. So we'll get to the counties that we cover later in the webinar to get even more clear about that. But that's the region that we represent, and we promote responsible tourism and regional economic development. That is our goal through the lens of tourism. So our funding comes from the Oregon Regional Cooperative Tourism Program. That is managed by Travel Oregon, and they pay 20% of the statewide lodging tax back to the regions where it's collected. And so we spend 10% of our annual budget that we receive from that program through a strategic investment fund. And so, as I said before, our service area includes Southwest Clackamas, Yamhill, Marion, Polk, Linn, Benton, and East Lane counties. So our strategic investment fund is designed to directly invest with our partners within the valley to fuel community-driven work and support destination marketing and development. And the total amount of money that we have to award this cycle is $85,276. Very precise number allocated, like I said, as that 10% of our budget. And the funding amount that you can request is between $5,000 and $50,000 for a project, or for a meeting and event sponsorship between $1,000 and $3,000. So we have intentionally left the parameters for this fairly broad to allow for a wide variety of projects to find themselves within this fund, but we do have a few priorities just to help give you an idea of the kinds of things we're looking to support. So in the marketing space, some of the possibilities would be familiarization trips for social influencers and travel-focused media creators, marketing materials and campaigns that support shoulder and off-season niche and secondary visitor experiences in emerging markets, so bringing funding support to those areas that might need a little extra lift. And marketing asset acquisition, so professional photography or videography that supports your destination marketing. Under the destination development bucket, that would be developing niche and secondary experiences themselves. So not the marketing of those experiences, but actually things that support building those experiences for visitors. Venue accessibility improvements like hearing loops or multilingual signage or other accessibility improvements. trail stewardship investments, so wayfinding and accessibility improvements, volunteer development, things like that. And then organizational development. So if you're a nonprofit that's serving the visitor industry, maybe you need board development or strategic planning support or some other kind of skill development. That's a possibility for this fund. And then in the category of meetings, events, and sports, this is where you can request support for a bid fee for a sports or meeting event, sponsorship for meetings and events in the Valley, or, and this is something that we added this year, scholarships to be able to attend business-to-business conferences for the visitor industry, like the Go West Summit, where you see some other examples here. We really want to make it possible for our partners to participate in these networking and learning opportunities that maybe they wouldn't otherwise be able to attend. So eligibility, again, we've left it intentionally broad. So nonprofit organizations, for-profit visitor-facing businesses, federally recognized tribes, and governments that serve or provide a visitor experience in the Willamette Valley. The applicants must serve the Willamette Valley region and be located in the counties that we serve. DMOs, destination management organizations, may apply for funds as a fiscal agent for a project that doesn't have an official organization sponsor. And you may submit multiple projects for the fund, but in each grant cycle, only one project can be awarded to each entity. So if you have a couple different ideas, you're welcome to submit for all of them, but we'll only choose one per organization at the most. So our process, again, we've tried to just make it as streamlined and clear as possible, but welcome any questions or feedback you have about it. We have a project pitch form to fill out that will open on October 1st, and that includes a simple budget that we ask you to submit, unless you're submitting for sponsorship funds. If you're asking for that $1,000 to $3,000 amount to sponsor an event, you don't have to submit a budget. We will review and score each pitch we receive with a scoring rubric for equity. And if we have questions or something seems unclear or we need more information, we may ask for a meeting with the applicant just to make sure we've understood the application fully and any questions can be cleared up and everyone has the best chance possible of receiving the funding that they need. And if your project is approved to move forward, we'll create an MOU and we will share budget and tracking or budget tracking and reporting requirements. We'll ask you to save all receipts and be able to account for the funds spent, as well as, some deliverables depending on what the project is. For marketing and development projects, we will release 90% of the funds immediately, and then the remaining 10% of the funds when the project is complete and all the receipts and reporting is complete as well. And for a bid fee, we will set that money aside, and if the bid is successful, then we'll disperse 100% of the funds at that time. So our timeline, this fund is opening October 1st, and we'll work on a rolling basis until all the funds are allocated. So you could submit your project pitch anytime after October 1st. Once a month on the first of the month, our staff will review the applications that have come in through that scoring rubric and will award projects on a rolling basis. And by June 30th, all funds must be awarded and allocated. So we have, a good number of months. You don't have to feel pressure to submit your application immediately on October 1st, but when the funds are gone, that's it. And then as projects are completed, we'll ask the applicants to submit their receipts and recap and deliverables. And again, they'll receive the remaining 10% of the awarded funds when that's all finished. And then by December 31st, 2026, all the awarded funds must be spent and the project's completed. So as you're considering what to apply for, just keep in mind that the project needs to be completely done by next December 2026. So we're wanting to make it very transparent what the criteria for a successful application is. So the project pitch form will ask about these criteria that are required. We're looking for projects that bring visitors to your community from 50 miles away or more, that clearly align with the priorities we've laid out in destination marketing and development, that clearly benefit the visitor industry in the Valley, that introduce a new idea, enhance existing offerings, or fill in a gap in the Valley's tourism landscape, that support long-term regional economic sustainability. And again, it's a project that can be accomplished by December 31st, 2026. And then things that can enhance your application, they'll be asked about on the project pitch form, but they're not required, but they will give you additional scoring weight in our rubric. We're looking for projects that ideally incorporate sustainable tourism practices, contribute to accessibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion in tourism, leverage partnerships and collaboration within the valley, and benefit more than one Willamette Valley county. So we're really trying to highlight and emphasize projects that promote collaboration across jurisdictions. And then just to get a little more detailed about some of the destination priorities that we have as a region, if you haven't worked with us very much, things that we really look to support include sustainable visitation, inclusive and accessible travel, outdoor recreation, culinary and agritourism, arts, culture, and heritage tourism, lesser known destinations, shoulder and off-season visitation, multi-day meetings and events that bring folks from outside of 50 miles, sports competitions, games and races, and FAMs or familiarization tours for meetings, events, and sports planners. And then we wanted to share an example of a budget template in case this is new to you, just to get a general sense of what we'll be looking for when we ask for you to submit a project budget. So it's pretty simple. We ask you to write down what you are looking to receive from us in the Willamette Valley Visitors Association Strategic Investment Fund. If you have other income supporting the project, we'd like to see that as well, just so we have an idea of how else the project is being funded. There's no match required, but it's just nice to know, how else the project is being funded. And then your expenses for the project should add up to the same as the income for the project. So everything should balance out in the end. And just to make that hopefully a little clearer, we do have an example. This is a completely made up project, but maybe can help you see what this could look like for a real project. So this fictional project is asking for $2,500 from the Strategic Investment Fund. They're contributing $270 of their own organizational money, plus some volunteer support that is not reflected in cash, but is equivalent of $133.96, very precise. And then you can see their actual expenses. They spent money for a design consultant, for printing signs, for a web theme, and then they had in-kind support from volunteers to install a sign. And so the project's total expenses added up to the same as the income, and you can see how the organization.
Still want the old rate.
Welcome.
We're trying to get the new rate.
We're recording, so I'm gonna mute you if you don't mind. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, we are happy to walk you through this in more detail if you have questions or if this process is unfamiliar, but it's just to help us get an idea for how the funds will be spent and what other kinds of financial support you have for your project. And then just because examples could be helpful, this is a list of projects that we funded in our first round for this fund in 2024, 2025. So successful applicants were the Albany Pickleball Club, the Aurora Visitors Association, the Carlton Winemaker Studio, Mackenzie Trail Volunteers, Remy Wines, Taste Newburgh, and Visit Corvallis. And you can see the kinds of projects that were funded and the diversity of projects that we supported. So that was a lot of me talking. I appreciate your attention, and I've put my contact information up on the screen. I'm more than happy to have a follow-up by email, but really we wanted to make sure we opened up time for you to ask questions that you have about the grant. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and would love to hear what you're thinking and wondering about.
This is a quiet group. I am going to point out that it was asked in the chat just to confirm, in case you didn't see it, that all the October submissions would be reviewed on November 1st. So that will be our first review date for this fiscal year for the fund. And then same thing, November submissions would be reviewed on December 1st.
Great. Thank you for that question. Samantha, what can we answer for you?
Sorry, I just have one more. Thank you so much for the presentation. Super helpful. And I was like getting snips of the slides so I can hang on to that. Um, just is there an average award or is it really there's nothing too small or is it like just an average ask or is there really not an average?
That's a great question. Tori, do you have a good answer for that?
Yeah, so I will say this is only our second year providing the strategic investment fund in this form. Pre-COVID, WAVA had a granting program that was a little more intensive and a little more structured, like Travel Oregon's grant program. We're really viewing this investment fund as like a training program. Like, here's how you make a budget. Here's how you make a timeline. Here's how you're going to track these receipts. And we're going to ask extra questions instead of putting something away because maybe it didn't fully answer it. So I will say last year, I think the biggest grant we did was 20 above 20,000. I can't remember exactly. It was for the exact amount, but it was for the pickleball project because it was ADA infrastructure, and infrastructure is always going to cost a little more than some of the other projects. And any ask that crosses that $20,000 threshold will be reviewed by staff and suggested for funding and will go to our board. So there is a threshold of which of staff is going to say we suggest that we fund this project because of the impact it's going to have in the visitor industry in the Willamette Valley, and then the board will still need to vote on it. So it can add a small delay, but we will be communicating with partners on that.
Thank you.
And we did put a minimum of, except for sponsorships, we did put a minimum of 5,000. And partially is it does take a lot of staff time to manage and move the projects forward. And so we do want to make sure it's a large enough project that we feel like that staff time investment is also returned on impact in the valley, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. And sorry, maybe you said it, but does the awardee have a year to accomplish the project and expend monies?
It depends when you apply, but you have till December 31st of 2026.
Got it.
So if you apply in May, but you can be completed by that date, that's okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for those questions. And then we have a question in the chat about an event and the best way to apply for funds for event support. So that would, I believe, fall under a sponsorship, regardless of the kind of event it is, whether it's sports or arts and culture. That would all fall under the events support sponsorship category. Does that sound right to you, Tori?
That is correct. And the caveat is sponsorships will only be awarded to multi-day events. So if you only have a one-day event, you do not qualify for the sponsorships. But any multi-day event, whether it's a multi-day historic home tour, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's a meeting or conference in your community, any of them can apply for a sponsorship between $1,000 and $3,000. And the application questions are a little bit reduced. You're not required to submit a budget. But we do want to know like who's coming to your event, how are you reaching visitors a little bit as far as making sure our event sponsorship is seen by visitors.
And Stacy, I see your second question in the chat, and that might be a good one for us to just discuss offline to get a better idea of what you're thinking and how this might or might not fit. Yes, one grant per cycle per organization is another question in the chat. So if your organization has a couple different ideas and you're not sure which one is your strongest bet, you're more than welcome to submit more than one project pitch form. We can have a conversation about it first, or you can just submit and then we can talk about it afterward, whatever you feel best about. But eventually only one award per organization per cycle is our limit. So. And then I should have said this up front, but to prevent you from having to frantically snip slides, these guidelines and slides will be available on our website so that you can have access to them. And then we'll add the FAQs as well. And then the project pitch form will open. It's a Google form, so it's pretty simple format, but we'll also share a document that has all the questions just like in a Google document. So if you want to get your answers ready before you actually get into the Google form and work on it that way, we'll provide that. So the questions, like I said, reflect the things that we've put in the guidelines, but that's just another way you can access them and work on your application ahead of time without having to do it in real time in the form. Other questions that anybody might have?
Quick question.
Yeah,
So
thanks,
if an
Devin.
event is, let's say it's like a joint partnership on an event where I'd be working with another partner organization to bring in the event, and they were already planning to apply for that, but I also had a different thing that we were doing internally. Would that still just count under that one per year? Would that go to like two different? Like say, me and you were working together, you applied for a sponsorship for this one event, but I had another event that we were also doing just internally. Would that still just fall under the one sponsorship for myself?
So I think what I heard is like if you were partnering on one event and maybe the other organization could be lead applicant, could you be lead applicant on another event that you're doing, but you might see some benefit from having two projects funded? Is that what I heard correctly, Devin?
Yes.
I would say because they are two different events, and if you're working with another organization and they could be lead applicant, I think that's okay. But you do want to, it will be the other organization receiving for that event, and then you would be receiving for the thing that you applied for. So I have no problem like supporting collaborations and things, but we just want to make sure that it's not two specific projects going directly into one organization, if that makes sense.
Of course. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if anything like that feels unclear when we get an application, that's when we would just reach out and have a conversation. We're wanting this process to be very collaborative. We're not going to just be looking to rule people out on a technicality. So we'll definitely follow up if something like that seems confusing or unclear.
And Karen did post her email. It's in the guidelines. It's going to be on the webpage about it too. And if you have questions before you apply and before you build the budget, because I know that takes time and capacity, and many of us don't have a lot of that extra time and capacity, please reach out and we can talk through questions ahead of time and help guide or steer you or say like, I don't think that's actually a fit for our funding priorities this year. And so that we can help you navigate the process without having too much capacity left.
Other questions we can answer? And again, if you think of them after the fact, which is what often happens to me, please just email them and we'll still add them to the FAQs if they're something that the whole group could benefit from. Okay, I see a question in the chat about the Corvallis Knights. Please forgive my newness, but is that a sports team?
They are I think they're a farm team. Is that correct for a professional baseball team? Based in Corvallis. I'm not great on leagues, so sorry about that. But because it is a multi-day event and ideally you're trying to get people out throughout the season, they could apply. They are a nonprofit, which is fine. We do allow for-profits to apply in our cycle as well as federally recognized tribes and government-based entities. And so then too, what is seasonal can be different based on where you are. So for Corvallis nights, it might be like, boy, actually July is super hot and it's hard to get people out in that heat. That's actually when we need a little more marketing support to drive people to this baseball event instead of when it's a little bit cooler or school started back in September. Um, and we need help driving people, or we need to really market move-in weekend across the Willamette Valley for Eugene and Linfield and all these to try and drive people into our sporting event, that's okay. And so it can be based on your event seasonality, might not just specifically like as an average in the Willamette Valley. May to September is kind of our peak season with the shoulder, and then soft season as you hit more like winter. I am aware that for Corvallis being a college town, some of the school events help other parts of the year, and summer can be a little weaker in Corvallis than some of my other communities in the valley. So it can be what's seasonal for you, not necessarily just the average across the region. You just want to articulate it in your application.
Great questions. Thank you. Anything else we can answer? not hearing anything. Like I said, please reach out when something does come to mind, and we'd love to hear from you by email or phone. I'm glad it feels collaborative and not cumbersome. That's great. Do you need the IRS 501(c)(3) letter to prove nonprofit status? Great question.
Not at the application point, but we will want to see like any form of official paperwork or document, and then you will also need to submit a W-9 to receive funding from us. And so that will be in the funding process.
And if we mentioned this, but just to make it clear, if there's a project that doesn't have a 501(c)(3) designation or is not an official for-profit business, a DMO, a destination management organization, can serve as a fiscal agent for the project. Or if it's a collaborative of people that doesn't have an official umbrella entity. So you can work with your local DMO to be the fiscal agent and have the official paperwork. So that's an option. And we have funded projects like that in the past.
And I think like my one soft final reminder is that these funds are available due to lodging taxes paid by booked hotel rooms across the valley. And so our goal is reaching the visitor. State statute actually defines a visitor as someone who travels 50 plus miles or books a hotel room. So that's the audience that we're hoping to reach, and that's the audience we're hoping your projects will reach. And so you'll want to kind of keep that little nugget of information about who's your target audience if you're applying for marketing help, or how does this development project, new trail, better parking lot, whatever, serve that visitor who's coming into your community. I know that the ripples effects can be positive for the locals who live in the area who want a better parking lot or want a restroom at that trailhead or whatever, but that just remembering that the audience we're trying to reach is that visitor traveling in and out of the Willamette Valley.
Another question in the chat: can we apply once for the visitor center and another time for our charitable fund?
I, we hadn't thought about this question, but off the top of my head, I would say yes if you're just solely doing fiscal agent work for that organization who's going to perform all the work for you. And we can get really specific into those nitty-gritties if we have to, if we have a project like 2 projects come through like that.
Well, thank you everyone for your time. So glad that you took a little bit of time to be with us. I love that we're still getting more questions. The 50-mile range for someone to be a visitor, 50 miles from the valley or 50 miles from the site where the project takes place? Excellent question.
And it would be 50 miles from where the site takes place. So, so in your local community, that could still, if you're on the really southern tip of the Willamette Valley, you might still overlap with some parts of our region, but for you, that's a visitor. That's okay. Great question.
Anything else that's arising to your mind? Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, we will post this webinar recording, but we'll also share the slides and the guidelines. And please do reach out if more questions come to mind. We want to be as helpful as possible, like Tori said, before you do the work, so that we can make this an efficient use of your resources and capacity within your organizations. And we look forward to collaborating with you. So have a wonderful morning, and I hope to talk to many of you soon.